And lastly, we've been scanning. I've had over 100 people working around the clock to scan the paper around RFK, Senator Robert F. Kennedy's assassination, as well as Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. These have been sitting in boxes in storage for decades. They have never been scanned or seen before. We'll have those ready to release here within the next few days.
That's great. Bobby, how do you feel about that?
I'm very gratified to hear.
That's hitting close to home, isn't it?
No
When you think, I'm thinking about Bobby when that statement's made.
I'm very grateful to you, Mr. President.
Wow. I'm excited. I'm jacked. Wow.
I'm too. That has to be so intense, though, to be, it's his father. We're talking
I didn't know
decades
he was sitting
later.
there. Whoa.
I know. That's why I had to get that clip, because the fact he's sitting there and hearing that about his dad is just amazing.
Dude, this is going to get this. I've been waiting for this because the JFK stuff, to me, we could do that as a hobby on our own, which everybody's been doing for 30, 40 years, going through these files. It's just been amateur hour for people like me who watch everybody just pulling old shit and just saying, what's this? All of a sudden, it's just like, all right, bro, now it's time for the adults to get in the room, because Gabbard has stepped up and I think, said, I'm not going to let Bondi deal with this thing. I'm going to deal with it. And it sounded and looked completely different, Eric. This was revealed at a cabinet level meeting with RFK Jr. sitting there. You could tell the gravitas of this situation is 180 degrees away from what Congresswoman Lunachick was doing.
Lunachick. There we go.
Yeah.
You got it nailed now.
Yeah.
Lunachick. I was especially impressed by her saying that she has hunters in there looking.
Yeah,
That's
right.
So she's taking it the next level. Like,
while
I'm at it, let's go see what else is there.
Right. Because this, unlike the JFK files, which go back to the 1992 Assassination Record Review Board release, these all have never been released. These are all sealed Justice Department files on both assassinations, and this is an explosive situation because nobody knows what's in there.
No,
I hope I know what's in there, but I don't know. I mean, the MLK thing, I believe, is extremely explosive. Just to get this out of the way first, and then I'll talk about the RFK situation. The MLK situation, there was a district judge who went way beyond his power in the late 70s, sealing the records and audio tapes of Martin Luther King that were from the Willard Hotel, from wiretaps from the FBI. Martin Luther King was not a government employee. He was just an American citizen, a public figure. And the judge took it upon himself to seal these tapes and files for 75 years. I blew my mind. Yeah, I mean, there was nothing going on. And he, under pressure behind the scenes, decided to seal these audio tapes and files, on Martin Luther King. Now, just to address that for 1 second, these are tapes from the Willard Hotel. And if you read Ralph Abernathy's autobiography, first edition, he talks about what they were doing in the Willard Hotel. That's where Martin Luther King famously said, I usually pray to God. Tonight I am effing for God. And these is when they had these girls up there, and it was wild. The wiretaps were put in by J. Edgar Hoover legally with a signature from the Attorney General of the United States, Robert F. Kennedy. I hope to hear those audio tapes. I believe in full disclosure, not, saying these are going to make him look bad. And I'll tell you another side story about this. Oliver Stone was hired by Warner Brothers to write a script about Martin Luther King. He included what I just said, that those nights at the Willard Hotel in his script. The family flipped out. Warner Brothers pulled the plug. They paid him probably, $1 to $2 million for the script, whatever his fee was, and pulled the plug on the movie. And Oliver Stone famously said, if you wanted a Hallmark Hall of Fame movie, why did you come to me in the first place? And it's a great line, but absolutely true. He said, I want to show a full-rounded human being as a character, not a cardboard cutout icon, which is what these people want. And that's why I want these tapes released. I don't believe in historic, iconic figures that are not human. And that's what they'd like us to look at with this guy. I'm sorry that he had character flaws. I really am, but we all do. And he was no better and no worse than the rest of us. And I'd like to hear what the hell was going on. Now, that being said, again, getting into the weeds on this briefly, John F. Kennedy took him for a walk in the Rose Garden, him being Martin Luther King. Said you have to separate yourself from Levinson. Levinson was an American Communist Party affiliate of Moscow. He worked directly from Moscow. He was one of the closest advisors to Martin Luther King. And this was constantly cited by Hoover to JFK, and JFK was telling Hoover to get off Martin Luther King's back. And J. Edgar Hoover said, I'm not getting off his back because his chief advisor is an avowed communist with connections to Moscow, which was absolutely true. So JFK called Martin Luther King in, and I think it happened twice. And he said, you got to get rid of this guy. I can't protect you from Hoover while you have Levinson in your inner circle. And Martin Luther King, either to his credit or not credit, said, I'm not going to do that. And JFK says, I'm sorry to hear that. I can't protect you from J. Edgar Hoover any longer. Now, you could determine what protect means. It could be wiretaps. It could be the suicide letter that he sent to Coretta Scott, to him, with the audio tape, telling him to commit off himself. As crazy as that thing sounded. But nevertheless, there were numerous dirty tricks being played regarding COINTELPRO and other things at the time by the FBI, whether you agree with it or not. We were in the middle of a physical and violent cultural revolution at the time, which people on the left tend to ignore, thinking it was just Tuesday. It wasn't Tuesday. There was a violent cultural revolution going on with weapons and explosives and bombs and murder and police shootouts and everything else, and people tend to ignore that and just finger people on the conservative right saying, how could you have done this? Well, here's a case where RFK Jr.'s father signed the orders to legally wiretap Martin Luther King in the Willard Hotel. Okay, I believe that's in there. And I believe the stuff about Levinson is in there. And we know about Levinson. This is not completely unknown, but there may be more about Levinson in there. So that's what I'm looking for. And there could be stuff on James Earl Ray and how he got to Europe and how he got the multiple passports and how he got paid. And maybe they know about certain things, the FBI, and didn't want to help him out in his court case with Mark Lane, which we covered a couple of weeks ago, where Lane was defending James Earl Ray. And that was not in a court of law. That was for the House Assassinations Committee hearing. But nevertheless, the MLK stuff may involve James Earl Ray and may involve whoever the people were that were being followed by the FBI, who may or may not have paid him, because I believe there was a conspiracy to kill MLK, and they caught the shooter, but they didn't get the guys who paid him. So you could still say there's people who got away with murder, which is true, and James Earl Ray, I don't care. You could have your own opinion. I don't care whether Judge Joe Brown had a mock trial somewhere on TV or something. There's just too much evidence regarding James Earl Ray as the actual shooter. And we covered some of that with Mark Lane. Don't we have an episode on?
On James Earl Ray.
Right. Now, so that being said, I'm excited about the MLK stuff because, again, this is not the National Archives. This is not the same thing as waiting for an activist who may or may not be your political enemy, as was the case with the Trump situation at Mar-a-Lago. This is a politicized National Archives, which I never knew existed, but apparently everything's politicized. So the archivist, there's still people in there from the old administration. That being said, the Justice Department is run by Pam Bondi, and the Trump attorney, sort of
between her Fox stints. When she's not at Fox, she might show up.
Right. But I'm saying there are Trump loyalists who are his attorneys, who are also in the Justice Department right below her. to act as a buffer or something. That being said, the RFK stuff is very exciting to me. I know much more about this than a lot of people do because I've done so much research on RFK's assassination that at first, like many people in America, I believed it was an open and shut case. And now it is an open and shut case in another direction. And RFK Jr. and I both teamed up with the other brother, the older Kennedy brother, and his son to get Sirhan paroled 2 or 3 years ago. And the parole board bought into my argument. And surprisingly to me, I was the most shocked person in the room. The judges agreed with me and voted to parole Sirhan, who both RFK Jr. and I know was not the killer of his father. That's just a fact. Whether you like that or not, I still believe there was a lot of mind control involved with Sirhan, and that's a separate issue. And I've explored that in great detail in other areas, and I'm hoping there's documentation in there about that. The Sirhan case, that's a separate thing. The parole's a separate thing. But nevertheless, the case itself, we now know beyond really a reasonable shadow of a doubt that Thane Eugene Caesar was the killer of RFK Sr. The ballistics is kind of irrefutable. The Thomas Noguchi autopsy was called a perfect autopsy. This is not JFK, my friends. This is a horse of another color. This is an open and shut case with a guy named Thane Eugene Caesar dressed as a security guard, putting a gun to the back of RFK's head within an inch of his behind his ear and pulling the trigger and then up into his shoulder. This is a photo from a video I have that's earlier in the evening. That's Thane Eugene Caesar as a security guard at the Ambassador Hotel here in LA, June 5th, 1968. He will later, I don't know if this is a photo with his tie on or not. If he doesn't have his tie on, that means it's after the assassination, because RFK, while he was going down for the final match, pulled the tie off of Thane Eugene Caesar's neck. It was a detachable tie, and there's a famous photo of the tie laying there on the floor next to Romero, who was a busboy who was took out the rosary and was praying over Bobby's body. Thane Eugene Caesar realizes his tie is missing and comes back after the murder looking for his tie and picks it up and gets it. Now, he may have picked it up and not put it on, Eric, which I think may be the case here. But he did come back to retrieve that tie, knowing that it linked him to the assassination. He then sold the gun. He lied to the FBI. Lied to LAPD. There's a lot of stuff which we can't get into here, but we will do future episodes just on this, because this, my friend, is a much easier case to solve than JFK, and this should be reopened. And he recently passed away being protected by Dan Moldea in the Valley in Los Angeles. Dan Moldea is a famous crime novelist, crime nonfiction writer, and mob-associated guy. Wrote a couple of books about Reagan and the mob. Wrote one about O.J. Simpson. He wrote one about the RFK assassination, and somehow became the deep state buffer between the world and Thane Eugene Caesar, even attempting to block RFK Jr. from talking to him, wanting to charge him $25,000 an hour just to talk to Thane Eugene Caesar, who has had a security clearance out of Burbank and from Skunk Works. There's just so much stuff on Caesar, plus the autopsy by Noguchi. But there's a guy that we'll get into later that we'll do an episode on, who, I don't know if you have some photos of some of these things I'm talking about here. There is a guy who was a newscaster, Baxter Ward from ABC News. He was the highest paid newscaster in America. He was making more than Tom Brokaw. This is Baxter Ward. He was at ABC News here in Los Angeles. And Baxter Ward was the highest paid local anchor in the United States, making $1 million a year. He was making more than a guy who was on NBC, who had not yet gone national, named Tom Brokaw. And this guy quits his job to run for the Board of Supervisors in Los Angeles, simply to open up hearings actual hearings into the assassination of RFK. And in those hearings, he brings in Thomas Noguchi and definitively proves through analysis and Noguchi's testimony and charts and photos and everything else that, and this is Noguchi at the Ambassador Hotel. This Noguchi, when I say Thomas Noguchi, the most famous coroner in America, did the autopsies for every celebrity that ever died here, from Monroe to Bellucci. But these are 2 extra shots that are in the door jamb in back of where my friend Paul Schrade got shot in the head. The first person shot in the head was a friend of mine, a friend of Bobby Kennedy Jr. His name Paul Schrade, who was an executive for the United Auto Workers and was involved in the Kennedy campaign in 1968, political campaign. He gets shot in the head directly, the first shot from Sirhan, and then he empties his gun wildly. These 2 extra shots add up to into 8 shots, and more than, if you take away the shots that are supposedly in Kennedy, there's 8 that are accounted for that are not in Kennedy. And it's a pretty easy game. There's actually audio recordings of the shots. The LAPD covered this whole thing up. And the reason they covered it up, and we'll get into that, there was a guy named Manny Pena, and there was a guy named Hank Hernandez. Hank Hernandez was a sergeant, and Manny Shoot-'em-up Pena was a lieutenant. And the reason I mention these 2 guys is both of them were trained by the CIA. They were part of the intelligence unit, like Al Gonzalez was for New York. This is Manny Shoot-'em-up Pena. He was a lieutenant at the time in the bank robbery division in LAPD. He would just shoot anybody for looking the wrong way. He had like 2 or 3 killings on his belt and a number of other shootings. However, Manny Pena was trained at Camp Peary, Eric, at the farm by the CIA. As I've said many times on these shows, the CIA had members trained by them who were urban police detectives in intelligence unit in every major city who reported directly to them. In LA, it was Manny Pena and Hank Hernandez. Here's Hank Hernandez over here. That's Sandy Serrano on the left. Hank Hernandez's specialty was a sergeant. His specialty was to use a lie detector test to manipulate people and intimidate witnesses. And the lie detector test was used by intelligence people not to test whether you're lying or not. They would use it as a device for interrogation and intimidation. Sandy Serrano was a volunteer for RFK's campaign, a young girl from LA, and she sat on those back stairs. And Sirhan and a girl, according to her, in a polka dot dress, went up that stairs, and another guy before the assassination. And then the girl ran down afterwards saying, "We shot him, we shot him, we shot him." In the audio tapes that I have, and we will play them in another time, you will hear Hank Hernandez breaking this girl down unmercifully in an audio recorded interrogation. The reason they kept it was, this is the girl in polka dot dress. The reason they kept the audio interrogation was they use it as a model still at LAPD on how to break a witness. And what they were doing was flipping all the witnesses, like in the JFK case. The LAPD, 2 guys who were in charge of Special Unit Senator, that's what it was called, SUS. The investigation was called Special Unit Senator. These 2 guys were in charge, and they were CIA operatives, and they were there to bottle up the investigation, Eric. So Hank Hernandez used his skills, and Hank Hernandez was sent to deal with dictators in South America and brags about it on the tape, how he was sent by the CIA. He openly talks about his career in the audio recordings, saying, "I had to go to South America on many occasions and there's one in particular where there was an overthrow of a dictator by another dictator, and they took the original dictator and were torturing him. They brought in Hank Hernandez to get him to confess, whatever." He refers to that to Sandy Serrano, who's crying. He's saying, "You're doing this to the Kennedys. How dare you?" He tries every manipulative thing to get her to admit that she's lying, that there was no girl in a polka dot dress, that she didn't see Sirhan, that she made the whole thing up. And finally, by the end of the tape, she just breaks down sobbing. But she never really recanted. And afterwards, she said exactly what she said, that they were just manipulating her to get what they want, which was to get everybody clammed up and to focus on the one assassin again, which was Sirhan to them. very similar tone, but much more sophisticated than the JFK case. However, Noguchi was suspended by LAPD because by the county. He later sued and got his job back and testified at Sirhan's trial and was yanked off the stand as he was about to tell you what I was going to tell you about the gunshots. Noguchi invented blood splatter evidence and stippling and all those things. And he was taking pig brains and putting the gun muzzle up to behind the ear of the pig brains to replicate the wounds of RFK. And in his autopsy, he talks about the gun being behind the head, or either touching the head behind the right ear, or an inch away. Sirhan never got within 8 feet of him from the front. So anyway, this guy, Thane Eugene Caesar, who was a supporter of George Wallace and anti-Kennedy as it comes, ends up being the shooter. And RFK Jr. knows that, and we've talked about it. So hopefully we're going to get somewhere in this investigation which is going to put some focus on the murder of his father. And we may not ever get closure on JFK, but we can certainly get closure on this one. And I'm willing to testify anywhere, anytime, any place for this particular case. The other one was a dog and pony show that was I don't even know what that was. But this case is serious business. And the problem with this case is when they finally got it to be to the stage to have it reopened, the Attorney General of California declined to do it. And her name was Kamala Harris. And that's where it died on the vine, with a chick named Kamala Harris who refused, despite CNN backing the audio tapes that were presented of the recordings of the bullets. CNN brought in forensic audio analysts and said, oh, you know what? This is real. And they started backing it. And even that was not enough, because so many people, Eric, have been promoted up the ladder from the original case. They were now judges. They were now lieutenant governors. They were now Supreme Court justices within the state of California. That's the problem with these cases. I think you might be a little muted for yourself. Well, anyway, the RFK thing is a fascinating case. Oh, go ahead.
Is it going now? Sorry.
Yeah. You're good.
I'm thinking that it would be especially important to do something now when you still have Thomas Noguchi alive.
Oh, yeah. And before Kamala Harris becomes the governor and puts the kibosh on it.
Yeah. So definitely move fast.
Yeah, I mean, this is hot to trot. Like I said, the JFK thing, I there are files in there that are of interest to me as a historian, and there's and to others. But most people know there was not going to be a smoking gun in there. But this case, we already have the smoking gun. He sold it to a fellow worker from Burbank in Skunk Works, then lied about it, and the guy had the receipt, having sold it to him right after the assassination. That being Thane Eugene Caesar. There's just so much evidence. I mean, the LAPD literally was helping the guy get away with it.
Yeah, we have pictures of that pistol somewhere. I don't have it immediately available.
You may have some other photos of some of these other people involved here.
Just the RFK.
Okay.
RFK. I showed all of them, but
okay.
We do have 3 episodes on RFK. If you guys want to dig into the channel,
that's helpful.
With Sirhan, RFK, a lot on Thane Eugene Caesar. I'd recommend you check it out. Also, a full breakdown of what happened with the parole hearing.
Yeah, I have audio tapes. I have audio tapes of that, and it's very interesting because there were people behind Sirhan who were so far left that they turned on me, and I got them off, and they still were saying, "How dare you?" I mean, they were not. The people who have backed Sirhan since day one have been people with different agendas. And like we're seeing now with the Menendez brothers hearing, which is going on right now with Garagos as their attorney and Van Nuys, as I speak to you, California. What the state wants is for you to have a full-throated confession of guilt and then a full-throated confession of remorse. The Menendez brothers are not doing that. That's why Nathan Hochman, the DA of LA, is not embracing their release, because they are claiming we did this because of A, B, C, and D. That's not what the state wants. And it's not what parole boards want. From Sirhan, the case was, I can't express remorse because I don't recall the incident because I was in a blackout. Anyway, I made a long case to the parole board, and they agreed with me. I was kind of shocked. And then they voted to parole him. And then Newsom got calls from the Kennedy sisters saying that he could take an Uber from to Malibu from Pasadena and kill them. I mean, just the craziest crap you can imagine from these two nutty broads. And Newsom went along with it, saying he worshipped Kennedy, but he's not going to listen to his own son and the older brother. Just very strange, very strange. But anyway, he's going to have the Menendez thing back in his hands in a couple of weeks. Newsom, and then he may have this case again back in his lap with Sirhan and a reopening of the entire thing.
Well, let's hope. I mean, there's no statute of limitations on murder.
There's no statute of limitations on murder, and it doesn't matter that Thane Eugene Caesar is dead, because who cares? He should have been. We should get to the bottom of the entire case, and I hope that these Tulsi Gabbard files are going to get us there. At least create enough momentum, Eric, in the media to reopen and look at this case, because everybody believed that this was a slam dunk case in the other direction, and nobody looked at it. And once it began to get more inspection, it became obvious that everybody had been wrong.
Well, we'll know how hot they are as the time gets closer. If people start to really scream and holler and squeal about that, then we'll
but now
know
Bobby's in the cabinet of the United States government. I mean, I don't care what his sisters say. They could go to the hairdresser and scream all they want. This guy's a government official, and they're not.
No, I mean government officials. If you start to hear from other officials like, no, we can't do that. I'll make all these retired people coming out. You'd be like, what you got? What's in there?
Right. Well, just to put more meat on the bone, LBJ said to everyone, and it's in a couple of episodes, I'm gonna kill RFK if it's the last thing I do, and I'm gonna cut his throat if it's the last thing I do. He sicked the FBI on RFK Jr. They had a task force of FBI agents that followed him around. There's a photo that I gave Eric of him speaking at San Fernando Valley College in March of 1968. In that speech right here, this is in LA in the Valley, he finally said at the end of the speech that if elected, he would reopen the investigation into his brother's death, and he was dead within 60 days of saying that. Now, keep in mind, up until this time, he kept saying half-heartedly he believed in the Warren Commission. At this place, in this time, in March of 1968, according to his closest aides, he said that if elected, he would reopen the investigation into his brother's death. That put them into overdrive, and he was gone within 60 days.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like a strong pressure deadline, just like when JFK was killed. There was a lot of pressure on another guy.
But it's the same guy. That's what I'm saying. It's the same guy. I mean, keep in mind, March 31st, 1968, which you will hear when you get the LBJ audio drama that's being fine-tuned right now. You will hear LBJ saying, I will not run, nor will I accept the nomination of my party for a second term. This green lights RFK, who is his arch nemesis. He did not want RFK. He wanted he wanted Humphrey, so he could control Humphrey, who he felt was his puppet, rightfully so or wrongfully so. That was the perception of most people. And his arch nemesis was a guy who he out loud vowed to kill. I don't know what else he could say. He told everyone for years, I'm going to cut his throat if it's the last thing I do. And if you go to comments by RFK about LBJ and Nixon and right, Eric, and others who talked about the animalistic nature of LBJ, the only ones who don't believe in LBJ's incredible maniacal homicidal behavior are Democratic liberals. They're the only people on the planet Earth who believe that this guy was a saint. And it is another type of mind control that they have, just like about everything we've been through for the past 5 years. They cannot get their mind around the fact, and everybody else in the country, people who grew up with him, his own grandmother said, as an infant in the crib, said you're going to end up in the penitentiary. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming about this guy's homicidal and criminal behavior, except for Democratic liberals who believe that he is.
Mark, he's a civil rights icon. He's a
Civil
great
rights
society
icon.
guy.
Yeah. So the pushback, what I'm saying is the pushback is going to be from people in Congress who are on the liberal Democratic left, who are not going to allow this. Combined with the MLK thing, there's going to be pushback, Eric.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure. And then, like Kearns will be pushing back, I'm sure, because
Crockett and some of these other people.
Without a doubt. Let me do some chats real quick. We got a new member with Robert Zipfel. Jim tells he's a member for 11 months, saying this is the greatest show on the interwebs.
Really?
Well, thank you. Dick Dickerson gifted 20 American Untold Stories memberships. Salty Mermaid, love the show, gentlemen. Thank you. Rano Browno. What do you guys think of Elisa Pease and her A Lie Too Big to Fail?
Completely deranged book. Sorry. Sorry.
I like how
At one point, I have to say, it is what it is. She goes along with everybody else's work for 3/4 of the book. And then in the last quarter of the book, she's got gunmen standing on the steam table, shooting at RFK from up above that nobody saw. I mean, I'm reading the book and I'm going like, holy crap, this is crazy. But you need something new to get a book published. And that was her something new. That there was a guy on top of the steam table just shooting down, and it's 100 people in the room, but nobody happened to see this guy. And I just laughed out loud. And I said, honey, good luck. Good luck with that book.
Wow. Diffuse 56 gifted 5 memberships. Thank you. Dr. Evil 814. What about all the gold in Fort Knox? Haven't heard anything lately.
Hey, I'm still waiting on the drones. I didn't get up to the gold yet.
Good point. Yeah, good point. I don't know what's up with the gold. And yeah, I don't recall. They were talking about they were going to be in there, but
what do you think happened with the drones?
I think that they were testing.
Okay.
It was, it was a U.S. run program.
Yeah, that's what we said that originally, but what is so hard to say? I don't understand. You can't say that? Everybody else has to be gaslit like they didn't see it. That's better. That's a better answer. Give me a break.
I don't know. Fletcher boy. But Mark, we're from the federal government and we're here to help you.
Well, I mean, there's elements. I mean, like I said, RFK Jr. is the federal government now, and he wants to get to the bottom of his father's murder. And who could blame him? There were no. This is before you were allowed to have Secret Service protection as a candidate. LBJ famously ordered it moments after the death. It was a little too late. But nevertheless, there are things that RFK. This is to say it frankly. This is personal. I mean, this is personal.
When after RFK was gone, then go ahead and protect your candidates. There's nobody to worry about.
Right, he was gone too, LBJ. The real rogue element in all of this stuff, and this goes back, of course, to JFK, is the unprotected, unaccounted for Secret Service, secret army that James Rowley and LBJ controlled. The unchecked power of the Secret Service is what allowed the assassination of JFK to happen and the cover-up. Everything is about the Secret Service. People keep looking at the CIA, the FBI. When you read the memos about Hoover being surprised about the phony Oswald in Mexico City, that Jefferson Morley keeps promoting, this imaginary Oswald who's talking with Kostakov in the Assassination Bureau in the Soviet consulate, you could see that Hoover, as he's telling this to LBJ, is not privy to this information. And I think the cover-up, obviously the FBI with LBJ were in on the cover-up. But I do not believe that the FBI was in on the assassination in that regard. The Secret Service, however, that's a horse of another color. They are in this thing up to their necks in every single regard, beginning, middle, and end. And I don't even think it's the Secret Service as an entity. It is control by people who use the elements of the Secret Service to pull this off in Dallas. And Rowley was, co-opted, or what do you want to call it, by LBJ and other members of the Secret Service force. As Bolden has said, these guys hated JFK's guts. So for them to be involved, they probably looked at it like, good, let's get rid of this guy. It's not like they came up with the plan. They didn't come up with the plan, but they sure as hell were involved in it.
Well, they're very weren't they all veterans? World War II veterans, just like
well, that I don't know, but they certainly were hard drinking Southern redneck types, according to Bolden, who were racists and had no problem using the N-word to his face, to him. That's why he was incarcerated, because he was calling the Warren Commission and trying to blow the whistle right after the assassination and tell them what happened. He goes back to Chicago and he's immediately arrested. I mean, it's just so blatantly insane. What happened to Abraham Bolden is so outrageous, as the first Black White House detail Secret Service agent.
We also have a Bolden episode for anybody who wants to check that
which
out.
The Bolden people loved. His lawyer, I think, contacted us afterwards, thanking us for the episode. And, a lot, he put out a great book about it, but there's other information you can find on Bolden that's in there.
For sure. Vince Palomaro's done a lot on Bolden too, I believe. Yeah. If people want to, dig deeper into the story. And he did finally get pardoned, which was good.
Yeah, it started under Trump and it was finished under Biden.
So one decent Biden pardon.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, I just wanted to let that news just broke, so I wanted to address the Gabbard thing. I don't know what Pam Bondi's doing down there. I mean, it seems like she's rounding up the wrong gang members now and deporting them, and this thing. I mean, there will be no acknowledgement of Pam Bondi's affiliation with MAGA until she oversees a political case. These criminal cases are fine. They could be left to lower level state people of rounding up gang members, stuff like that. Until she grows a set of balls and goes after one political case, I am not going to.
Didn't Trump just announce, or was somebody else doing the investigation?
I have no idea.
The guy, I forgot the name, but he removed the clearances from this person and is investigating him. It was somebody in the 2020 election.
No, I'm just looking at it as all chatter. Until there's a perp walk and there's a political scalp, I am not going to stop chirping about this chick. I'm sorry. It's now going to be 6 months and there's not going to be happen. Then a year is going to go by and then it's going to be the midterms and blah, 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 blah. We need a political scalp now. This is 3 months. They've been in office. All they're doing is running around arresting gang members. It's enough already. Go after the big fish and bring one of these in on charges. It's enough. If you can't do it, honey, get out of the way. Let somebody put on their big boy pants and do it. If this is too complicated for you, if you want to be on Fox and have your own show, you can go over and do that. You don't have to be the attorney general any longer. But somebody's got to grow a pair of balls and do this.
Yeah, including Cash.
Including Cash Patel. I mean, this promotion of this guy to D.C., head of the FBI in D.C., this is not 4D chess anymore. I mean, look, I mean, firing, by the way, is not incarceration. These people think that somebody getting fired is the equivalent to being arrested. I mean, it's breathtaking. Arrest somebody. Stop firing people. They're being fired because they committed crimes. Well, indict them. Don't fire them. I mean, it's astounding. They believe that they're inflicting incredible pain on these people by firing them. Come on.
Well, Again, that's the differences on the right and the left
Yeah, it's
in that
shocking.
regard.
Absolutely shocking.
Because I say conservatives tend to be very conscientious, and
Yeah, no, I agree. I
them being
understand.
fired is like being arrested
I
in a
know, but
weird
it's
way.
not to me because, and I
I
said this
know, I
last
know.
week on Twitter. I said there are people in these New Testament people, and you know who you are, believe that you'll be judged in the afterlife by God. Okay, I get it. What do you do when you hear? I'm from the Old Testament, an eye for an eye, right now. So there's a schism in our belief systems. And I'm not saying, look, I only represent 5 people on the earth, but you
Mhm.
represent a lot more. But this judging in the afterlife is not going to cut it, folks. I mean, there's got to be some payment, right now.
Yeah, or you would like the punishment to be in installments. So there's
Yeah.
going to be a balloon payment in the afterlife, but
Yes, I want
you would
both.
like to you want a little bit of payment now.
Right. I mean, it really is Old Testament versus New Testament now.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah, it's an eye for an eye or judge them in the afterlife. I know that sounds simplistic, but it's not that simplistic because I talk to a
Yeah,
lot of conservative Christians, and believe me, the best friend of Israel, the best friend of the Jews is conservative Christians. Don't get me wrong. We wouldn't be and exist on the earth if it wasn't for conservative Christians. But they have a different view of the world when it comes to justice. And it's a little frustrating, Eric.
true. I guess I'm just more familiar with it over time.
Right. It's all new to me. So I'm like, they're going, because these people are saying, oh, they're going to have a lot to answer for. I go, when? At the end of the week? No, in the afterlife. I go, well, look, that's not going to help me right now.
True, sure. One thing that will help you though, especially when the files come out and there's things to look up, is get yourself some coffee so you have the
Oh,
energy.
yeah. Yeah, that's right.
That's something that I could be drinking right now. I am completely exhausted. I've just flew across the country today and barely got into the room to do the show. So I'm I may seem a little bit out of sorts, and I wish I had a nice pot of America's Untold Stories Supreme Breakfast Blend to help pick me up right now to make sure that I'm covering material in a great way. So
Well, I
please
brought some
check it
with
out.
me, so we'll bring it to the thing tomorrow if you can hang on till tomorrow night. I brought the beans
I
with me.
hope to sleep by tomorrow night. That would be nice. That would be an amazing thing to do. But yeah, right now I'm in Las Vegas. Mark's in Las Vegas. Viva Fry is in Las Vegas. We're all at
I don't
different
think Barnes
hotels.
is in Las Vegas. I think Barnes is in
No, Mark,
Seattle.
sadly, watching his client get put away in a ridiculous manner, and
Look, we have to go
it's
after them
horrible.
tooth and nail. Never forgive, never forget. Just the further this gets away from inauguration, and I mean the prosecutions of these people from J6, the prosecutions of former Justice Department officials, the prosecutions of former FBI officials, the further it gets away from the American psyche, the softer it's going to sound when this happens. The reason the fires have to be struck now while it's hot is because they just got into power. Don't come to me in 3 years saying, we're going to begin an investigation now. I mean, it's got to be right now.
Well, that's why the rush on tariffs. That's why the rush on everything, because the window is extremely limited. I mean,
Yeah.
Trump is technically a lame duck president,
Yeah.
and I
Or a
don't even think he
soaring
has 4
eagle,
years.
or a soaring eagle, as CNN called him.
No, that was a great little piece by Harry Enton, but it's still everything is getting chipped at left and right, left and right, and left and right, and
Yeah.
mistakes like deporting people that you're not supposed to deport and things like that. That's very harmful
Yeah. They have
because it
very,
gives
very,
ammunition.
very narrow window for error. They can't just deport people who turn out to be American citizens. I mean, this is, I don't know what's the result of this case here, but
Now,
so
I don't think the guy was an American citizen.
no, I'm not saying that case.
Yeah,
I'm just saying you got to
okay,
be
yeah,
super careful.
yeah, yeah. And I thought Tom Honan was more on top of it, but then even Christy Nome was starting to get a little bit of pushback. Megan Kelly kind of tore her a new one about, look, not every opportunity is a photo op. Be the damn boss. You don't have to be out there holding some
these
weird.
chicks will not stop. And this is Luna, this is Boebert, this is Mace, this is Bondi, this is Noam. They are chicks first, and chicks are going to do what chicks do. And I'm sorry, it's not a photo op. I agree with Megyn Kelly. I mean, you don't have to be on camera, ladies.
Right. Or if you are on camera, that's fine, being there in the suit with the people who are armed there. But she's like trying to play like she's kicking down the doors herself.
Well,
And it starts to look a little ridiculous. Like, okay, What is the central casting time? Come on now. Come on. But I don't know. I guess,
what was what's her name doing in the Oval Office, Gretchen Whitmer? What was that about? Why was she in there?
Well, Trump is doing something with the military base in her state.
Oh, okay.
And I think he pulled her in there just to make her squirm.
Okay, that was weird.
It was weird, but it was kind of hilarious because she was like, she didn't know how to react to anything. And then she apologized for being there, practically saying, well, just because I was there doesn't mean I'm endorsing anything. So he's kind of smearing her with his presence. But then he's actually helping her state out, which he won. So
That's
it's a
true.
weird
he did win it.
situation. He won her state, so he's sort of rewarding her state's people, but she's involved. So yeah, it made for some awkward theater. I think he was just.
I think there should be they got to start thinking about the midterms, and I think one day a week. What's her name? The press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, needs to talk about who's running, what state, what district, where to send money. One day a week, every Friday for 20 minutes. There has to be a segment by the White House updating MAGA and Republican people on the status of the midterms. Call it status of the midterms, whatever you freaking want to call it. Don't call me 3 months before the midterms and saying, I need money, we're panicking, we're on fire. Again, this is what they traditionally do. If these midterms go south, which they normally do for a sitting president, they'll begin impeachment the next day. Every single committee chairman is going to change hands. Congressman Luna is going to disappear. All of them are going to have the gavels away. You're going to have Adam Schiff back in power. I'm sorry, but you have to deal with this every week up until the midterms, not the last week. I'm just going to keep saying it every week until somebody hears it.
Okay. And for Will H, who wants to correct me on that.
What?
No, somebody was deported to El Salvador who actually had an order not to deport him to El Salvador. It's not just me saying it. It's Robert Barnes saying it. It's Mark saying it. So
yeah, I thought somebody was
go after
right.
yourself.
There's a couple of conflicts going on with judges' decisions because it's like you said, it's bouncing back and forth. So depending on where you're on a news cycle, there's a couple of different cases, so it could be confusing to everybody.
Right, and that guy, the specific case with him was he was from El Salvador, and the judge said, "Yeah, you could be deported." And the guy's like, "Well, you can't send me to El Salvador; they'll kill me."
Send me to Paris. I know. Send me to Paris. I'm safe in Corniglia in Italy. That would be great. Tuscany. I'd rather go to Tuscany.
Well, and you know what, though? I think it's a perfect little scam because if he's an El Salvador resident and you're deporting him, typically you would deport the person to their home country. But if they don't have a home country, I think that's the scam. Is like, oh, I can't go to Mexico; they'll kill me. Okay, so where do you want to be deported? I don't know.
Listen,
and what other country wants to take them?
The fact that they're going to kill you is kind of your problem. You know what I mean? It's like we didn't sign up to have a Green Beret group around you. Who's going to kill you? What's his name? What's his phone number? You could say any generic thing. They're going to kill me. Who's they? Tommy Jones? Who is going to kill you, bro? The gangs. Okay, well, anybody could say that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Didn't the guy lock them all up in Costa Rica anyway? The head of Costa Rica? Or El Salvador. El Salvador.
Yeah, he did. And the guy wound up going to El Salvador. And as Barnes made the case, technically on his record, it was saying, don't ship him to El Salvador. You can, expel him anywhere else, but just not there. Well, they shipped him there. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, circumstances change. For example,
it also doesn't mean that the judge has the power to do that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
Could you repeat that?
Well, I was going to say also the gang who had killed him are all locked up.
Right. Yeah, that's what I
So
was
they
going to
weren't
say.
really
Yeah.
the threat,
Yeah.
running around anyway. So
Well, it's also,
anyway.
I mean, if you're going to allow the judges to pick the countries, why don't you just let the judges in this critocracy run the foreign policy? I mean, I think Trump should just say, you know what? Why don't you guys run the foreign policy? I'm going to take a week or two off and let's let you pieces of shit run the foreign policy. Go ahead, man.
Well, there's some arrogance there where they actually would try to.
I know. I mean,
I
he's
don't know.
trying to paint a case, Trump, showing their arrogance so he could go to the Supreme Court and have a couple more victories. But the reality of it is, at some point you got to put your foot down, Eric.
Yeah, well, one victory. I think. Did you send it to me earlier? I haven't had many texts come out. I've been on plane. The Colombia guy can be exported, right?
Yeah,
Or expelled.
that happened this afternoon. Right. That was this afternoon.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember that judge said to the government that you have to provide some evidence to me, and you got to do it by the end of the day. So it sounds like they provided some evidence to him, and he said, "Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
you can
But
deport him."
that 5-4 decision by the Supreme Court allowing for the deportations of illegal aliens, there's a caveat in there that nobody reported, saying they have to have due process. And that means that nobody's going to be deported because it's going to take 500 years to do each one. They didn't define what due process was and how deep it goes. But for instance, if each one of them is allowed to lawyer up, present evidence, it's going to take years for each single one. That was in the ruling by the United States Supreme Court.
It was, but I think that the due process part.
How do you define it?
Well, it can be expedited in terms of just saying, okay, whatever you claim you are saying, are they a gang member? Yes or no? Okay, what's
Okay,
your
but
proof?
that's the Trump administration saying that, but we don't know what the court is saying. The court is saying they need due process. The ACLU is going to come back and say that's not due process. So, in other words, that was not resolved. In fact, if there's any level of due process, this will grind the deportation process to a complete halt, which may have been what this Supreme Court wanted. They didn't want to come down so bluntly and say that, but they did say that by saying you have to have due process. They, look, they left it intentionally as a landmine.
Which, I mean,
Not
the Supreme
surprisingly,
Court,
Eric,
it's pretty
right?
cowardly. I
Yeah.
mean, they're not, in favor of
Right.
Trump.
What I'm saying is that the next battle you're going to hear from Stephen and Trump and the group up there in the White House is going to be, yeah, we'll do what Eric just said. And they're going to say, whoa, wait a minute. That's not good. And that's not what we meant about due process. And they're going to put a hold on it again. And we're going to be right back at the Supreme Court, which is what they want. Their job on the left is to delay, stall for 4 years. That's their game. That 5-4 decision, I did not know that due process caveat was in there when I first saw it. And then it doesn't define the depth or the extent in these cases of what is due process for this particular type of affair.
Right.
Are you a gang member? Eric says. Okay, let's say.
Well, that's just one. That's just one
No, I don't know.
example.
You could be right. Are you a gang member? No, I'm not. Okay, now what?
That's one. Are you a gang member? How did you get here? What is your visa? There are a little bit of elements in there that can be pretty quickly checked. The El Salvador guy was kind of a blunder. Again, no question that he was ordered to be deported. It's just there was something in there that said, whatever you do, don't send him to El Salvador. And that's where they sent him. So it does look a little bit off. So taking that extra second, it depends. And I think it's the immigration court that determines it versus
Well, Khalil, this is the Jew hater from Colombia, will be deported. That's the case I just sent you. So the judge has ruled that Khalil has to go, which is nice. That's one down.
Well, especially that one because he's a cause celeb. I mean,
He's
Glenn
not, but
Greenwald is out there. Everybody is out there. Even David was sitting there saying, "Well, what did he actually do? Is this right? Is this a free speech issue?" Blah 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 blah. So that's a big deal. Well then, that would be called a bandwidth issue. And hopefully Mark's hotel internet is connecting.
But that, no,
There we go.
I was looking for something else. I pushed the off button there. But yeah, no, that's a good case. That Khalil thing is a good case. And there's a British professor, David Betts. I don't know if you saw this guy. He is in England. This is a shout out to our British friends. There's a guy named David Betts recently on a show on. I was watching him being interviewed by, I forget the kid's name, some brainiac conservative Brit, which I was just looking for that link. But he was talking about the coming civil wars that are going to appear in various countries because of mass immigration and governments complying with the new immigrants and the fracturing of the social order. And he used the example of Northern Ireland as a model from the 70s and 60s as how these things are going to, the powder keg is going to blow.
Especially when you're letting these immigrant groups create Sharia law in their own courts and things, which is happening here in Texas and in Michigan. I believe New Jersey. They declared the city of Palestine or whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is he's talking about a worldwide though, Eric. And he says we're past the tipping point, and that some spark is going to set it off in various countries. Oh, this is the guy. This is not David Betts. This is the host of the show, whoever this guy. And this is David Betts. This is a great interview. I highly recommend it. It's called "This Can't Be Stopped: The Coming British Civil War," and he talks about that's Betts on the right. He talks about the coming civil war in England, in the UK, and how they're way past the tipping point. There's no way out of this. The boiling point has been reached by white UK people, and they've just had it. And not only that, he talks about how they're fighting among themselves, like Pakistanis are fighting Indians. And I mean, there's other interstitial battles going on within this country that they've taken over.
It's weird too. I can't remember who said it, but somebody had mentioned that people from the Middle East have, like in Saudi and other countries in the Middle East, have warned that no, the powder keg people are in England.
Yeah,
they're over here. We kind of have them under our thumb a little bit. We know about who these people are. Over there, you guys have a problem, and you won't even know what to do. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
He believes it's going to happen in Germany too. He believes it's going to happen in France. It's not just England. He talks about the other countries as well. The locking up of Le Pen and just pushing this and pushing this and pushing this. He said the inevitability of this is almost like they want it to happen, and it will happen. He just said, I don't know where it's going to happen and when it's going to. He kind of makes an analogy like, nobody predicted a guy named George Floyd would have an overdose and then blame a cop. And these things that incite these things can't be predicted. But he said whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and it's going to incite mass uprisings, and it's on.
The thing is that I think that they can be predicted. You just don't know what the tipping point is.
He's talking about the incite. He says they're way past the tipping point. He says there's no way
that mechanism, whatever.
Yeah. He goes into detail about the real definition of the tipping point, and he says that the UK is way past the tipping point. And it's just waiting for an incident to occur that will occur, and that the actual incident he couldn't predict because they're so random. It could be anything.
Right. Well, and that's where I'm thinking that a lot of these, I have just factions that are waiting for the thing to appear that they can use. Kind of like COVID.
Look what happened here with George Floyd. I mean, all of a sudden, BLM comes out of nowhere. Antifa comes out of nowhere. Kamala Harris is paying their bail money. I mean, holy crap. This thing was so prepared. Just waiting to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel for England. I think they're screwed. Ireland's, I think, even further along, from what I understand.
Oh yeah, yeah. He said
Ireland's going to starting to. They're starting to riot.
May go first. Yeah, he said they may go first. They may go first.
And then Scotland is like one of the worst anti-free speech zones in the world
and
right
this
now.
banning of this conservative party in Germany may incite riots, he said.
Who'd have thought that the freer Europe is Eastern Europe?
Well, that's for sure. But he said that their model is they have to become draconian, they have to become totalitarian because their model is unsustainable. They would be voted out of office in a second if a real election was held, like in Romania,
France.
like in France, like in the United States, like in fill in the blank. They can't depend on elections any longer. They can't control. In other words, he's saying there's too much information in the internet age. And one thing he goes into in that interview is how part of the non-assimilation of immigrants is because of the modern day internet. That you could move from Armenia, and he makes an example. He says you could be an Armenian who moves to Wisconsin in 1930, and the only thing you're going to get is some newsletter somewhere in a library, possibly about Armenia, or a telephone call if you have a phone. Now it's like you're still living in Armenia. Right, but I'm saying now it's like living in Armenia and you live in Wisconsin. So the assimilation has decreased by 95% simply because of the internet. And he makes this really interesting point, which I highly recommend this interview.
No, that's an amazing point.
Yeah.
And it's part of society's ills are because of social media.
Yeah.
And the internet.
This is one of them.
Right, but because there you go. The same reason we actually have young men or young people not wanting to get a driver's license, not caring because their parents take them wherever they want to go, and they just talk to their friends on Facebook and things like that. So I could easily see that. Yeah, you're talking to Armenia, wherever you are, it doesn't matter. You have phone conversations all day long.
All day long. It's like you're home in whatever the Caucasus Mountains there.
Wow, amazing. All right, well, while we're talking about interviews, do you want to talk about I didn't get through all of it. I probably listened to 3/4 of the Dave Smith, Douglas Murray, Joe Rogan.
I don't know. Look, I mean, here's all I'll say about that. I mean, Douglas Murray's a brilliant guy. If you're a regular stand-up comic like this guy Smith and you're obsessed with Israel and the Jews, you might have a fucking problem. Okay, let me just leave it at that, Eric. It's not like he's talking to another intellectual who's a historian having a debate with somebody about the Holocaust or Israel. If you're a stand-up comic and you hate the state of Israel that much, you might have a problem with the Jews. I know it sounds crazy. I know it's insane. Most stand-up comics are not obsessed with Israel. I'm sorry. I mean, Greenwald wants to take it on. You know, he's a journalist. He's a lawyer. God bless him. But Smith, give me a break. Give me a break.
Yeah, it's sad because Smith's I think one of his grandparents died in the Holocaust.
Well, he's got a problem. I mean, he's got a problem. You know, Smith isn't the most famous Jewish name in the world, but knock yourself.
Well, I don't know. Doesn't it work at some other side anyway? That determines it.
Whatever, bro. You got a mental problem. You got a mental problem. When if you started railing about Egypt, and I said, well, look, he's got other states he doesn't like. But when it's only one, as Barnes says, if it's just one country and you don't shut up about that one country, you got a problem. If you have a problem. It's not the country that has a problem. It's you. But you don't understand, Mark. AIPAC. Yeah, they make donations. Hey, I get it. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, Tim Pool's going through it now because of a meeting with Netanyahu.
Well, look, I mean, it's the strongest it may be a stronger democracy than ours. It may be the strongest democracy on the planet Earth. It is a multicultural democracy. They didn't have their elections stolen like we did, folks. They didn't try to incarcerate and put mugshots of their leaders. This particular country has had elections and democracy since its inception. I know that sounds crazy. They're surrounded by enemies on all sides. And if they didn't have a nuclear weapon, they would have been overrun in 1949. It's the only thing stopping them from being annihilated on the face of the earth. I know that's hard to take, But when Israel invades Angola and when Israel invades UK, give me a call, because that's what Cuba did. Cuba sent troops into Angola. And I don't remember people calling for the destruction of the island of Cuba in the 80s, Eric, as you recall. This is not a militaristic or imperialistic government. They never go anywhere. They fight these condo battles on their borders, which I call condo battles, because they're really just, I hate to say it, but they're really just squabbles over land that is over condominiums. Speaking of condominiums, I wanted to get for a second to the rebuilding of Pacific Palisades with condominiums in California, because this story has now, you don't hear it all the time because you're on the East Coast, but there's an update on the rebuilding in Pacific Palisades. They have, this is after 75 days, almost 3 months of nonstop fast tracking of permits, and Trump coming out there and questioning Karen Bass about the building permits and saying it like 5 times in the town hall hearing. You're going to fast track these permits. And she said, oh, yes, we're going to have a system. And they set up tables everywhere and everything else. Okay. So far, 1 permit. This is such an astounding story. Just to give you the numbers, 16,000 homes were burned to the ground. They've issued 10 permits. 1 permit has a couple who are starting to rebuild and have an architect who has designed a home for them in Pacific Palisades. That guy was on camera complaining how he was shaken down by the LA city government to get the permit for the discounted price of $7,000 just to get the piece of paper. Okay? That's just to get the permit. There's only been 1 permitted house to begin rebuilding, and that's the one that I just described. This is after almost 3 months of nonstop jibber jabber from the city government about fast tracking permits. It really is shocking. It really is shocking. And this woman's up for re-election in June in the primary, so we'll see what happens. I mean,
because she wasn't recalled.
Because she wasn't
Caruso killed that.
Caruso killed the recall. And I don't know what this guy's story is, but as I said, there is this corporation for homelessness, the LA city or county homeless corporation outside the government. It's a NGO. And the woman we mentioned makes $550,000 a year. She left last week under pressure. The funds have been stripped out. No more funding from the county to this organization. Well, the Justice Department has opened up a case against the city of Los Angeles for misappropriation of funds. $24 billion. I just want to say this: $24 billion is missing, all earmarked for the homeless, and the FBI is going in there. Now, this I like. This if Patel could pull this scalp, it would be great.
No, and to be fair to the FBI, they've been on the case for a lot of corruption in Boston, New York. Ask Mayor Adams. And, obviously, LA. So they're pretty good on that front quite often. Well, that senator, they nailed that senator. Bob
in a one-party state, in a one-party city, the only thing between anarchy, corruption, and democracy is the FBI. There is no other arbiter of justice, Eric. It has to be the FBI or the Justice Department, the federal level, because in other words, they can't be allowed to just rule, one political party. They just keep stealing every cent.
So, what is your deficit in California while we're talking about all this?
The deficit is now $58 billion.
Oh, well, if we could track down the billions you just talked about, that would help a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the state. 58 is what he's saying. They're saying it's 138, according to certain people in the government, the state government. He's claiming 58 billion. Newsom, that's what he's admitting to. I mean, after 4 years of governing, 2 terms and 8 years actually, to leave your state 58 or $100 billion in debt. I don't know how you spin that. I mean, I think 30 billion was stolen during COVID.
Amazing.
It's amazing. And yet no federal indictments.
All right, some more super chats here. Carlos Villar Gonzalez. I don't know. Spending $20 to bring attention to deep state reptile Abigail Spamberger, the CIA's a true CIA swamp creature. You
Okay, but you
familiar
got to
with?
tell us who it is, bro. You can't just. You didn't bring
Wait,
much
thanks for the
attention.
20.
Thanks for the 20, but you got to tell us what's the case here.
That'd be nice. Grandpa gifted 10 memberships. Thank you. Pamela, happy Friday, guys. Thank you, Pamela. Happy Friday to you. Traffic with a super sticker. And then Pew Pew gifted 20 America's Untold Stories memberships. Pew Pew coming. This is a great day. We got Pew Pew, Dickerson, Grandpa, Diffuse, I think gave some. I love it when the memberships are going around. Fletcher Boy, Hoover and Dulles supply the intelligence to the Secret Service.
Oh, you have no evidence of that. You're just saying that. It may be true. I haven't seen that, so I don't know. It's easy to say stuff like that. Somebody was saying that, I was trying to explain in the Jonestown case how close they were to the Soviets, and how, they wanted to move to the USSR. They met repeatedly with KGB officials from the consulate in Georgetown. After the Jonestown massacre, they went full bore blaming the CIA, the left, because they had lost and they wanted to save face. This was in the 70s when the CIA was being investigated by the Church Committee, and everybody just blamed the CIA for everything. There was an
They're
agent.
still doing it. I can tell you from our chat.
What's that?
They're still doing it. I can tell
Oh,
you from the
yeah.
chat. Because when
Yeah.
you were talking about it on the show, it was like,
Yeah.
oh, no, that was CIA. It was a total
Right.
CIA. CIA.
It absolutely was not. It absolutely was not. In fact, that's why he hired Mark Lane, was to create smoke and mirrors that it was CIA. That's why he brought in Mark Lane. This connection to the Soviet Union is fascinating. They were going to move to the USSR. They set up in Guyana because he was a socialist and he had ties. They were trying to set up another Cuba in Guyana, which was a British colony up until the early 60s, late 50s. It goes back to the Dutch in the 15th, 16th, 17th century. But
It's like Belize.
Excuse me?
Kind of like Belize, right?
I don't know about
English
Belize,
speaking,
but
only,
Guyana was British, so there were the trappings of colonial Britain there. It was a black and East Indians. People forget the black Guyanese were in the minority, and the East Indians were in the majority. That came originally with the Dutch, and they were the majority. And they had a new president, Burnham, who, like Castro, initially said he was a U.S. supporter and then switched to the Soviets as soon as he got into power. So we had a CIA guy in the embassy, but there's a guy in every embassy. They cite this guy, Ken Dreyer, who was a U.S. consulate official who was CIA, but so what? Every aspect of Jones's operation was Soviet in nature. They had TASS officials visiting. They had Khrushchev associates visiting. They attended the consulate all the time. They had people going back and forth from Georgetown. There was money being exchanged, heavy equipment. They wanted to create. The reason it was put where it was, just geographically, was to put it on the border of Guyana, so the Venezuelans would not invade Guyana. That's where they put it, on the Venezuelan border, Eric. And they wanted a U.S. buffer. This was the Guyanese, wanted a U.S. buffer to protect their border with Venezuela. That being said, what Jones was going to do was he was going to take over Guyana as a country. He was going to topple this guy and make it a Soviet satellite and be in charge of Guyana. That's where he was going. We didn't get into it because the episode was more about Mark Lane, but I just wanted to point out that his Soviet communist mini-state that he created in Jonestown was merely buying time. He did so much research on Guyana and found that this was a state that was so weak that he could take it over. That's why he went to Guyana. and that's why the Soviets backed him. This CIA thing is a crock of shit. The only thing they were there is because they knew what I just told you.
Fair
and
enough.
they didn't want another Cuba.
All right, Mr. Mike said, Mark saw your ex-post Epstein files. Forget about it. Think of DC Madam Deborah Jean Palfrey. Never happened.
I have no idea what you're talking about, bro.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Thanks for the $5.
I'm just reading them.
Yeah.
Mark is right on. As a Christian, I can say that the New Testament does not overrule the Old. Justice is necessary and biblical.
Okay, then I'm right or wrong. What I don't. She
They're
said I'm
agreeing
right.
with you.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, I thought so. But what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it is more. I don't care if I'm right or wrong, but how do we get justice? How does this happen? I don't understand. How do you get justice?
Pray.
I mean, firing is not justice. I just want to point. I don't give a shit if they get fired. I mean, they've got to be incarcerated. And not for psychological reasons. It's more than just
firing is the first step.
It's more than just morality. It's psychological because they can't wait to get back in power and incarcerate you. They clearly have shown that they're willing to do it. Ask the J6ers how they feel about being incarcerated.
True. Again, though, like in a corporation, firing is the first step.
Okay, I'll take you on that word.
Often, it's like, okay, you're skimming from the store, right?
Okay.
Well, they're not going to let you keep working there. You're fired immediately, and then they investigate, and then you're arrested later, potentially.
Well, the store was robbed 5 years ago, so we got to get going on this. What we're going to do with these people.
Chris Shearer gifted 5 America's Untold Stories memberships. Thank you.
Chris, what is that? Your mugshot there, bro?
I don't know. Salty Mermaid with a super sticker. Thank you. John Raposa. The $1.99. Thank you.
Can you believe after we mentioned the accountant, they're having a part 2 out of nowhere?
Yeah.
I mentioned this film, like 8 years old. Next day, they announce a sequel to The Accountant.
Well, part of the reason that is on your radar is it went into cycle because there's a sequel being made. So they're pushing the original.
I didn't know that. But Rogan said something interesting. Doge should look at the Snow White movie and go into the finances of Disney and see what happened there.
Yeah. I mean, SEC could do that.
I know.
That's what I recommend.
And he really is looking into that. I don't know specifically about that movie, but.
Yeah, why not? Diffuse 56 gifted 5 memberships. Thank you. Julie Benge is a new member. Thank you very much. Robbie Williams, you make Fridays great. Well, thank you, Robbie. Spinner Pete has been a member for 8 months. Big Bill gifted 20 memberships. Man, they're really going and generous on memberships today. Thank you. And then Spinner Pete says, great info and hi.
I like this guy, Spinner Pete. He's from England. I think he's British.
He could be.
I think he's British.
I don't
have a beef with the white working class UK people. It's the elites that I despise, and MI6 and MI5. And I love Tom Hardy, of course, one of my big choices for Bond. I'll watch anything with Tom Hardy in it.
Yeah, I know. I noticed you're definitely into him. And he's a good actor.
He's the greatest living actor working today. Let me just be blunt. And
really?
Oh yeah, there's among people when we talk about Tom Hardy, most actors and most directors who are in the business will agree that Hardy is the greatest living actor today working. Some guys are at the end of their rope. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis, he's at the end of his career, obviously now, but Hardy
he's selective too.
Right.
Day-Lewis retires every 5 years, it seems like.
I don't care about that. I'm just talking about the work itself. I mean, Hardy is the man. He's the man. That's why I'd like to see him do one bizarre James Bond, because I think he would kill it as Bond. Not to live in that franchise, but do 1 or 2 Bonds and get out.
Like a Lazenby?
No, not that crazy. George, you talking about? What did he do on Her Majesty's Secret Service or something?
Yeah, he did 1 Bond.
Oh, he did 1 Bond.
It was an excellent Bond. It was a good one.
Well, I had Gilbert Gottfried as 1 Bond. We did a thing with Gilbert where he was the new James Bond. We went with an American in a spread we did for MTV Magazine.
Okay. Oh, whatever works. Speaking of investigations and jumping back into that, Trump orders the DOJ to investigate anonymous author Miles Taylor.
Who is this guy?
Miles Taylor is the guy who wrote leaking all kinds of crap about Trump.
Okay. All right. That's a start.
Including a book called A Warning.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
And, he was supposedly anonymous and all that. And it turns out this is who the guy is.
Oh, he looks like a
Miles
douche. This guy's a douche. Let's get him, boys. Oh, he's a mega douche. Yeah.
So, and then the former CISA director.
Krebs.
Big price to play.
That's a good douchey name, Krebs. Let's get Krebs too. Somebody's got to be arrested. I'm not going to, I just want to see, I don't care if you're even convicted. I just, if you go lawyer up and get out of it, good for you. But you got to put the fear of God into these people by arresting them. If you look, I'm not saying they're guilty or innocent, but you got to arrest them and let them, lawyer up. And if they get out of it, God bless them.
No. We want them convicted too.
No, I love that, Eric, but I'm not going to cry, if some of them get off. I mean, I wouldn't set the venue as the middle of Washington, D.C., that's for sure. That's a loser's bet. If she indicts someone and we find out it's a D.C. indictment, what is the point? Indict them in the middle of Montana.
I don't know if you sent me this or somebody else did, but
oh yeah, I sent you this. This is what I was talking about. Yeah, this was the Seth Rich thing we had talked about a couple of weeks ago, and people said it wasn't real, that it was fake news. This was according to, I forget who the original source was. It was somebody who worked for RT or something, who said there was a court order to release by March 10th or March 30th. All the suppressed documents in the Seth Rich case. Now, this guy is suing to get the documents that we were told a month ago were fake news. Yeah, that's why I sent it to you.
I can't help but wonder about, again, that's questions about Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. It's like, what's it to them?
I have no idea.
I'm saying, why wouldn't they be going, let's get in there. Let's show the record. You're kind of like
he's got to sue. He's suing Pam Bondi to get documents on Seth Rich on the case. And she's fighting on behalf of you, the American people, to suppress the document release of a conservative lawyer who wants this stuff out there. Think about that, what she's doing. Think about what she's doing, because that's what she's doing, folks. She's decided to go to court to be sued to prevent this guy who's representing us, when she really represents us electorally. She's trying to block the release of Seth Rich documents.
Right, I'm confused as to why, because it's like, if this was a Biden person, obviously, because there was scummy in it, but it's like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be the good guys now. You should be going.
Let me ask you this: she came out with I don't even, like somebody said, I don't give a shit about the Epstein files. What I care about is the fact that she came out with these folders that were blank, then said she was going to release the Epstein files when she redacts these names. You could redact the names in 2 hours, physically. I mean, what does it take? Decades to redact the names? I mean, give us a break. You're full of shit, lady. Nobody's buying this bullshit, Eric.
Yeah.
There's victims. There's victims in court documents. Okay. What does that take? 5 minutes? I mean, give me a break. It says Debbie Johnson, age 16. Okay, name's deleted. Now what? Oh, we're just going to look at it again. We're going to keep looking at the documents. Give me a break.
True. People are saying Pam Bondi.
Well, that's not so far-fetched, actually.
No. You're talking about Epstein too.
Yeah.
Because remember, she was in Florida, but interesting times.
Like I'm saying, it's not about the Epstein files. It's about the fact that she's a phony AG who really wants to do a TV show on Fox 9 o'clock on Fridays and have a show on there where she doesn't have to run around doing these things. I get it. Maybe we'll watch the show, but this is not the role of an attorney general.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I agree. I don't remember Janet Reno going on air all the time.
She did or she didn't?
I don't remember her doing it.
No, look, that's the perfect example, Janet Reno. Whatever you want to make of Janet Reno, she lived and
It was a
breathed
hard
being
case.
attorney general. She was harsh.
Yeah.
I don't mind some woman who looks like Janet Reno being the attorney general. That being said, in the middle of these things, she, for reasons that have yet to be explained, Pam Bondi cherry-picked a document that was unredacted regarding James Angleton, where he was dealing with the nation of Israel. And I go, yeah. And then she went back to work. And I'm going like, what was that about? What was that about, lady? She's got to go, bro. She's got to go. It's too much. It's just too much already. She's got to go.
I mean, now maybe you can tell me what the hell is going on with the Weezer wife.
Okay, look, Weezer, don't forget, Rivers Cuomo is somebody who was involved in the Elliott Smith case.
That's right.
Because he paid for Elliott Smith's girlfriend, who used to be his girlfriend, Jennifer Chiba, to flee the nation after the murder of or suicide, whatever, of Elliott Smith. She went to Boston. This is his bass player, who has a rock wife. And I say rock wife because that's how she identifies herself in public, as a rock wife. This is the bass player of Rivers Cuomo's Weezer band.
Well, she's not only a rock wife.
That's what she identifies as.
No, I know, but before, well, then maybe she's changed her job, because she also wrote a book, like a memoir, about being part of a harem.
Oh, that I don't know. This chick gets more interesting every day. I didn't even know she existed. She lives in Silver Lake. There was some high-speed pursuit that ended up in this little neighborhood. The guy who they were pursuing, this is separate. The guy they were pursuing, by the way, black dude, strips off his clothes down to his boxer shorts and starts watering the lawn, making believe he lives in a house that he's hiding in front of, then goes swimming in the pool while police going, there he is, right? So they as this is happening, this woman, having nothing to do with the high-speed pursuit, nothing to do with the crazy guy in his boxer shorts making believe he lives in the house next door watering the lawn, she comes out with a 9mm handgun pointed at the police. And the police say, drop the gun 5,000 times. She won't drop the gun. They shoot her in the shoulder. She goes back inside, comes out with the nanny, who is the blonde girl in the image. She's dressed in black. The nanny's in the lighter colors. And says that police shot her unprovoked. Just crazy case 2 days ago here in L.A. I don't know about the harem, so that may even add more to the craziness.
Well, I share that if you missed it. But yeah, in 2010, she published a memoir, Some Girls, My Life in a Harem, detailing the 18 months she was part of the harem of Prince Jeffrey Bolkai, whatever, of Brunei, alongside 24 other women in the 1990s.
Those harems did exist. They exist today too. Of actresses and girls in LA. They take their passport. They can't leave. They pay them a lot of money, and it's almost like a contractual thing. There are people who've done it who are pretty famous actresses that I don't want to mention their names, who were part of this before.
Oh, there's a term that's out there called a yacht girl.
That I don't know. That I don't know. But this is big in Qatar. This is big in Qatar, Brunei, and some other places. But I didn't know that about her. That being said, she was arrested, now charged with attempted murder of LAPD officers. She's handcuffed to a gurney at Cedars-Sinai Hospital or St. Joseph somewhere, recovering from her wounds to the shoulder. Again, she had nothing to do with this thing. She simply comes out with a handgun, about to shoot LAPD. It's the craziest city on the earth, Eric.
Yeah, and it sounds like she fits right in.
She fits right in.
Her own crazy.
We all know girls like her, and some of them are in Weezer.
Yeah. Wow. All right. How about, speaking of crazy? Some crazy has moved out of the country, but still having a problem with their daughter, Rosie O'Donnell.
Again, this is like the situation in Santa Fe where he had cut them out of his will. You know what I mean? This is a similar case.
Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman. Now, the case in Gene Hackman now, the state of New Mexico is attempting to get the $65 million estate of Gene Hackman because they could use the $65 million for their socialist Marxist state politics. The family, or the kids, the daughter and the other one, are trying to get the money, even though they were cut out of the will. So it's the natural blood offspring versus the Soviet mini-state of New Mexico in a battle over a dead actor's estate. This one is about Rosie O'Donnell cutting her adopted daughter, who's been off the rails on drugs since the day she was adopted. You know, a lot of time I noticed in recovery, adopted people do crazy stuff and get into drugs. They're not the best of the genetic pool, if you follow what I'm saying. They're usually coming from people who are not that healthy.
Well, also, they're bringing a lot of baggage quite often, right? If they've been abandoned or abused or from a really terrible background. And then you mentioned a lot of them could have had their mother could have had them as an alcoholic or a drug
Yeah,
addict
no,
while they were carrying them.
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. That's a very common scenario. A lot of addicts were adopted. Let me just put it that way. I'll leave it at that. And she's apparently one of them. So she's got a really has had a rough life addiction wise, and now she's changing her name from O'Donnell because her mother cut her out of the will. Unfortunately, she's changing it from O'Donnell to O'Connell. I'm not sure how that works.
Well, her mother's a little wacky too, so I don't know if she landed too well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she could move to Ireland too.
Oh yes, and there's some other folks there to greet her. Should be entertaining.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me see. I don't know if you saw this story. Here we go again. Married teacher, elite Catholic school, admitted having relations with a student and sending them a nudes and everything else.
Yeah, it's never going to stop until they put cameras in the classrooms. And that will intimidate them to not even look at these students. That's all it takes. It's not rocket science. How many more of these? This is every day. I've been covering this story for 15 years. I covered it when I was a reporter before. I mean, it's just insane. It's now escalated. So it's on steroids now, this storyline.
No, it's common. It's, as a matter
Keep in
of fact,
mind, these are the ones that have been caught. These are the ones that have been caught.
Oh, I agree. I'm saying though, it's gotten to the point, if you're talking about a teacher having relations with a student, it's starting to default that it's a female
Well,
with
that's
a
because
male student.
80% of teachers are female now.
That's true. But I'm just saying, you're not even hearing it nearly as much about men. It used to
Nearly. It's
always be.
never. How about never?
Well, maybe occasionally, but rarely.
Yeah.
Rarely. So it's just incredible.
They're usually hot. They're usually married. They're usually bored. Seems to be the troika.
Yeah. And they were all influenced by Van Halen in the 80s.
Oh, that I don't know. But the reality of it is it's a crime. It's statutory rape. And, the prosecutions are really picked up. I mean, they're really incarcerating them now and prosecuting them, which is good to see. But the way to stop it is cameras in the classrooms.
Yeah. I agree. I think that I would like to know more of the causes behind it too, because like anytime something becomes such an epidemic, there are systemic issues that are out there.
Well, I mean, the first thing to do is stop the bleeding. I mean, you can look at it all you want. You could have papers written about it, but right now, you got to stop the crimes.
True. Fletcher Boy said Chag Sandwich, Mark. I don't know what that is. Fletcher Boy said Chag Sandwich and Salty Mermaid.
Sometimes Fletcher Boy gets into the meds in the med room, and he's got the key. Everybody knows it. He goes in there, and we check the vials and the bottles, and there's been a reduction in volume.
True. Okay, Keith is saying the source of all this scumbaggery, Teddy Kennedy. He drowns abroad and couldn't run for president. GD Kennedy's get away with everything.
Well, not all the Kennedys, but he's right about Ted Kennedy. He has created so much damage, including Watergate, for that matter. I mean, he was the brains behind Watergate, as Jeff Shepard pointed out, a friend of the show, because his presidential career was destroyed. He operated behind the scenes as the lion of the Senate, completely drunk out of his mind, by his own admission, an alcoholic by his own admission, a womanizer by his own admission, and a train wreck of a man. I encountered him once in his boxer shorts, screaming at me that we were too loud watching the Watergate hearings. So that was my experience with Ted Kennedy, who was hungover at the time. But he's right. He's absolutely right. The guy did so much damage.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, we did do an episode on Chappaquiddick. Maybe you want to check it out.
That's right.
Very popular episode.
It's a very popular episode, and I'll tell you, it's kind of like JFK, the movie, because I don't really solve the mystery in that episode. I put in different theories, and I don't know what really happened. I didn't say that I did.
I don't even know if he knows.
Right. I think he was in a blackout, when it happened, and I don't think he knows. It's correct. Yeah. I think when he met his associates, he said, I don't know what the hell happened last night. I'm in a blackout. So they pieced together a story with the wise men who they brought in from Boston, and they created a myth and created a story and did what they could and ended his presidential career. But it could have been, involuntary manslaughter.
Wow. Well, we're going to be shifting to locals and getting prepared for our weekend in Vegas. I'm hoping that I'll see a lot of people here who are watching the stream right now in locals. And it's very possible because a lot of people are coming to this event. I'm looking forward to it tomorrow. Wow. But we'll be continuing talking for a few more minutes on locals at unstructured.locals.com. Again, it's free to be a member. And if you like it while you're there and you want to support more, you can. And that'll get you things like the Oswald audio drama, the soon to be released LBJ audio drama, and other documents and whatnot that we bring up. I do an exclusive show every Saturday called the Girl Stream. Just kind of a hangout with people.
Hey, how's the sound on this thing, by the way, people in the chat? How's my sound?
You sound good here.
Okay, I don't know, because I was getting some popping. It's all right? It sounds good?
Seems all right to me.
Okay, because I rigged it a different way this time, and this is like my road unit,
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, we'll continue evaluating in locals and head over there right now.
Okay.